Ladies and gentlemen, I give you David Horowitz.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. I never thought that I would be standing here today as a conservative with a book, actually a series of volumes, about a movement that is running our country and ruining it, the progressive so-called left. My parents were members of the Communist Party, card-carrying, which means they were part of a vast international conspiracy that was indeed orchestrated from Moscow, and they were attempting to, or their goal was to create a Soviet America. Of course, they didn't call themselves communists. I never heard them use that word. They called themselves progressives. My mother was also a registered Democrat. Over the course of the last 40 years, the communist progressive left that I grew up in had moved into the Democratic Party, started with the McGovern campaign, and today sits in the White House and runs the Democratic Party. Now, I know when you say, oh, the Democrats, they're communists, people will look at you and say, this guy is an extremist. He's a relic. Actually, I was called a relic by a Harvard professor in the New York Times for noticing that there's an alliance between the radical left in America and the Islamo-fascists. That professor, Noah Feldman, is an apologist for the Islamo-fascists. Not surprising. But it wasn't as though the New York Times identified him that way. Valerie Jarrett and David Axelrod are Obama's two key advisors. One is political campaign manager, and Jarrett manages everything else. Barack Obama, Valerie Jarrett, David Axelrod, all were born into the same communist left that I was, all trained in the communist left, all graduated to the new left, which was formed by red diaper babies like myself, with the same political agendas. And they've never left it. And how do I know that? Because I am someone who did leave. And I will tell you, if you are part of a movement that you come to understand is destructive and deceitful, the first thing you want to do when you get out is to repudiate it and to warn other people about it. And they, of course, haven't. But this is a mentality. I have to understand, as I say, my parents call themselves progressives. Leftists may be delusional, but they're not stupid. So they understand that you don't telegraph your agendas because it will turn people off. When I was young, Stalin was alive. The slogan of the American Communist Party was, it wasn't Soviet America, dictatorship of the proletariat, take away the wealth and distribute it to our friends. Their slogan was peace, jobs, and democracy. There is a guru of the left named Saul Alinsky. People are pretty familiar with him by now, a Machiavellian, who said, there's one message of the Alinsky book, which is don't telegraph your agendas, lie. Thus, if you want to introduce a comprehensive state-run healthcare system, otherwise known, that's communism. What you do is, first of all, you call it single payer, as though that's a very benign thing. It's not benign if the state controls everybody's access to health care, can decide what kind of health care you can get and what you can't, and knows all your financial and health information. That's a totalitarian state right there. Not too long ago, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is a extreme left-wing ideologue on the Supreme Court who had only 4 Republicans voted not to confirm this ideologue, and is never referred to as an extreme left-wing ideologue, but that's what she is. Not too long ago, recommended to the Muslim Brotherhood, which was then, thanks to Obama, running Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood, an organization whose spiritual leader has called in so many words for the extermination of the Jews that slaughtering Christians across the Middle East, supported, however, by the Obama administration, still supported. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's advice to them when they were getting a constitution, or a fake constitution, since the Muslim Brotherhood has a motto, the Quran is our constitution. That's their constitution. But anyway, she was advising them, and she said, I wouldn't recommend the American Constitution. This is Supreme Court Justice. I wouldn't recommend the American Constitution. It's kind of old. I wish I was making this up. It's kind of old. I would recommend something like the South African Constitution. The South African Constitution is the Stalin Constitution sort of, brought up to date. It's a communist constitution, and it was written by communists. Progressives don't look at the past. They look at the past to discard it. That's why they all talk about a living constitution. It's an old document, the Constitution. That's why the Constitution, even though it was written a long time ago, is still the wisest political document ever written. And, we are abandoning it as we are at our peril. What progressives look at is the future. But the future, so they have a future where everybody is we're going to throw money at poor people, and that's going to make them just like middle-class people. No, it's not. That's the problem. It's not. But their future, in which there's there's equality, there's no war, there's no poverty, is imaginary. The difference between the past and the future, the past you can make mistakes in analyzing, but it actually happened, and there's actually records. The future is a fantasy. It's a delusion. And it's the core belief of everybody on the left, that there is this golden future if we can just get enough power and enough money to achieve it. Everything else fails because we didn't get enough money. We couldn't extract enough money because of these evil Republicans who are anti-taxation. It's an imaginary future, and that's what makes it so dangerous. These people are pumped up. They're intoxicated by their own self-righteousness at bringing about the wonderful world which all you and all Republicans and conservatives are determined to prevent from happening, and that's the only obstacle to them. The more beautiful the idea, the nobler the cause, the greater the crimes you are willing to commit. If you could actually have a world where there was no war, no poverty, on and on, all these things eliminated, what lie would you not tell, and what crime would you not commit? And that's why progressives in power had killed 100 million people in peacetime. This is not just like Hitler did in war. In peacetime, progressives killed over 100 million people across the communist world. Lenin did not come to power saying, I'm going to create gulags, put tens of millions of people in slave labor camps and slaughter others. That's not what he said. Peace, land, bread. He had a vision of the beautiful future that Marx had promised. That's what he had a vision of. And that's what caused him to be such an evil individual as he was. But how do they get this mentality? How can you betray your countrymen like that? How can you guys hate America so much? How does the left, how do they hate America? Well, and that's because conservatives look and they, we've been to another country or you've read about it. This is incredible. This is paradise compared to 99% of the world. if you're on the left, if you're a progressive or a liberal, you're not thinking about the real world. You forgot about South Africa, which is now a destroyed country. You forget about South Africa as long as there's not a white person as the prime minister, you don't care about it anymore. But progressives, they're thinking about the imaginary kingdom. And compared to the paradise that progressives envision, hey, America's a bad place. Any place would be. I mean, after all, we have poor people, more poor people now than Obama has been at it. And once the progressives get power, what they do is they generalize poverty. That's what the experience of the Soviet Union should tell everyone. Except we don't read about the Soviet Union anymore in our schools because our schools are run by these same leftists. The final characteristic of the left is its dishonesty. Very important. If you're a leftist, you're going to have to lie. Because if you told people what your agendas were, what your true beliefs were, you really think America is a bad country and needs to be taken down. And you're happy that we're no longer a significant world power thanks to Obama. You cannot telegraph, you can't say what your agendas are because Americans are still in a place where they would understand something is profoundly wrong if you did so. And therefore they lie, and they lie all the time. They have to. If you're defending something where you can say, well, look, if you're a conservative, you say this worked here, this worked there, that's fine. If you have an imaginary future, which Americans will be very suspicious of because they don't want to put their lives in the hands of the government entirely, then you have to deceive them about it. And deception is what this whole administration is about. I never thought I would reach a point in my lifetime where I thought we were close or could be close to a totalitarian or a one-party state where you could suppress any political opposition and just run it from then on, one party. However, if you are prepared to use the Internal Revenue Service politically to punish your opponents, if you have in place a comprehensive state-run healthcare system where you have access to the health information and economic information, financial information of every single American. And if you have a spy agency, which has got such super technologies that they can read and listen into every communication between individuals in the country, you do not need a secret police to destroy your opposition. You already have it in place. And we have a president and we have a political party in the Democratic Party that has shown itself ready and willing to embrace this very system, which could end our democracy overnight. That's the dark news I bring you. When I came over from the left, that's the first thing I said is, where's the ground war? Where's the army on the right? There is none. I had watched how, the communist progressive left that I came out of, active in the streets. We hated the Democrats when we began, blew up their convention in 1968, but how that force moved the Democratic Party steadily to the left until the Democratic Party now is really, it's run by the people who used to run SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, the radical group of the 60s. Although I once formulated a little differently. I said the Democratic Party is a coalition of communists and crooks, and that's where I would put the new governor of Virginia, on the crook side as opposed to the communist side. The big problem with the right is it is made up of conservatives who are not disposed to fight a political war. You know, the only time Republicans show an appetite for blood in the political arena is when they're fighting each other. And this is true, and it's sad. You can't galvanize a force capable of opposing these progressives who are religious. They're religious fanatics, and they're driven, they have a passion. You can't do that without having a passionate cause yourself. Everything the Democrats do is a threat to individual freedom. When they just take people, categorize them by the color of their skin. The Democratic Party is a racist party. Progressives are racists. The Civil Rights Acts of the 60s eliminated race from government and institutional regulations. The progressives, the Democrats, the Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton racists restored it. So now we have kids all over the country. That doesn't matter what they could come from very wealthy parents and be very privileged, but if their color of their skin is dark, they're going to get a privileged leg up in admissions policies and everything else. You can thank the left for that. We have to fight a moral crusade for the equality of individuals before the law.